Alright guys, welcome to another Quant Skills video, and this is section 3A, beginning of section 3A, which is about percentages. And we're going to make sure that you're comfortable with the other things that go into percentages. There was a basic skills video before this that talked about cross multiplication and working with proportions, and so you need to view that before you get into this video because that skill will be mandatory for how we handle percentages. But just making sure everybody understands what a percentage is. Percent is Latin. Percent means out of 100, okay, or divided by 100. And so when you've got 50%, if you want to convert it to a decimal or a fraction, you just write the percentage symbol. That symbol, remember we did stuff with units, that symbol's like a unit. And so it means divide by 100, out of 100. So 50% is 50 out of 100, 40% is 40 out of 100, 8% is 8 out of 100, and then you can just reduce those fractions to their lowest terms. Or if you're trying to convert them to a decimal, then you use your calculator. 60% is 60 out of 100, type 60 divided by 100 in your calculator, you get 0.6. Or 72%, you take 72 divided by 100 in your calculator, you get 0.72. Okay? Now, I know a lot of you have probably been taught before that if you have a percentage, you move the decimal to the left, and if you want to get a percentage, you move the decimal to the right or whatever. Well, don't learn it that way. That's a poor way to teach it, mainly because it's a 50-50 shot. Wait a minute, was I supposed to go left or right? There's no actual conceptual understanding of what's happening. So if you want to convert decimals to percentages, what do you have to remember? You have to remember that 1 is the same as 100%. So when you multiply by 100%, what does that do? That changes no value at all. It doesn't change your value at all. Okay? So they have you thinking of this as 4 out of 100, but I want you to think of this as if I have 0.04 and I want to convert it to a percentage, I multiply it by 100%. It's changing your units, just like you multiplied to change from feet to inches, you multiply by 12 inches, right? And so this is 0.04 times 100. Percent, the percent is the unit, it stays. 0.04 times 100 gives you a 4. 0.65, I don't want you to have to think about it as writing that as 100 out of 100. Take 0.65 times 100%, and then I'll give you 65%. Okay? So that's the easiest way to remember how to take decimals to percentages. Fractions to percentages, you need to change them to a decimal and then take them to a percentage. Okay? So, a couple of things about percentages before we get into the calculation of them. Remember that percent means out of 100. Okay? So basically they're fractions. And remember, fractions have special rules. You can't add them unless they have the same denominator, that kind of stuff. Okay, so watch what happens with a percentage here. The company you're working for is struggling, and your boss approaches you and says, would you please take a 10% pay cut for the next 6 months, and then I'll give you a 10% pay raise after that time. And so you're like, well, I'm trying to help the company, at least I still have a job, so sure, I guess I don't have a choice. So let's say you were making every month, let's say you were making $1,500 every month. Okay? Well, then if you get a 10% salary reduction, what is that? Well, 10% of 1,500 of means multiply, so you multiply by 10%, which of course is 1,500 times 10 out of 100, because that's what percentage means. And if you do that on a calculator, you get $150. So if we subtract that from our salary, our temporarily reduced salary is going to be $1,350. So then 6 months is up, you come back to your boss, you said, hey, you kind of promised me you'd give me my 10% raise, and he said, sure, you know, I want to make good on that, so let's figure that out. You're making $1,350, so 10% of that, well, multiply by 10 out of 100 again, and if you do that on your calculator, you get $135. Wait a minute, if I add that to what I have, I'm only going to get back to $1,485. I'm not back up to my $1,500. What happened? Well, percentages are, again, based on percentage of another amount, another value. So 10% of 1500 is different than 10% of 1350. You can't just add and subtract percentages. It doesn't work that way. Okay? So you need to understand that you can't do that. All right? That you can't add and subtract percentages. If you go to Kohl's and they have 30% off everything, and then you have a 20% off coupon off the sales price, you don't get 50% off. It's not 30% plus 20. Okay? You have to understand that. And so we'll talk about how to apply it to word problems and stuff in section 3B. But for right now, I just want you to get the basics of calculating percentages, okay? So how do I solve percentages? Percentages are, at the end of the day, a proportion. There is an is portion and there is an of portion. And if you take what is out of, that's the same as the percentage out of 100. It's a proportion. It's a ratio compared to another ratio, okay? So you come to number 1, it says 38 is what percent of 56? 38 is, put 38 on top. 56 of, put 56 on the bottom. And then what are you looking for? You're looking for the percentage. What percent? What? Well, if I don't know it, I call it X. And then out of 100 is always out of 100. Now you could call it P for percentage or whatever, but I just call it X. Okay, so now you have 38 out of 56 is equal to X out of 100. How do we solve these? This is what we worked on the previous video. We cross multiply. Okay, so you end up with 56X equals 3,800. And you divide both sides by 56. You end up with X equals 67.857 da 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 da. So we're going to round to the nearest tenth, 67.9. And remember, X was a percentage, so the unit is percentage. You gotta have that percent there. Okay, don't put a percentage if there's not a part of a percent, right? So we're going to round these to the nearest tenth. So why don't you guys try number 2? Pause the video and y'all give number 2 a shot. Okay? Who's playing the role of is? 60 is. Who's playing the role of? 126. And then what percent? That's the X out of 100. Same idea, cross multiply, you get 126X equals 6,000. Divide by 126. You get 47.619 da 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 da, so X is equal to 47.6. Again, percent. Okay. Now, in the other order of things, how about number 11? What is 130% of 152? Well, now what is over of is percent out of 100. What's playing the role of is what? That's what I don't know. So that's an X of 152 and then 130%. It is possible to have more than 100%. It's not possible for you physically to give 100% more than 100%. That's all you have. But when you're working with money and other kinds of things like that, percentages certainly can be more than 100%. Okay. So we cross multiply, we get 100x. When we multiply across this way, we take 152 times 130, and we get 19,760. And if we divide by 100, we get x equals 197.6. Not percent, because this time it's not a percentage. Percent happens only once in the problem, and that was 130%. That's the is part. Notice the is bigger than the of. Well, 130% is bigger than 1, so it should be bigger than the of. Okay? Why don't you guys come down here and try number 20. 67 is 13% of what? Pause the video, give it a shot. Okay, so now is 67 is over of what? I don't know what is, so that's the x. 13%, 13 out of 100. Okay. Cross multiply, we get 13x equals 6,700 divided by 13. And then you take 6,700 divided by 13 on your calculator, and you get 515.38, da 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 da. So you get x equals 515.4 rounded to the nearest tenth. Again, that's not percent because it's an of, it's not a percentage. The percentage only happens once, and in this case, you got it. It's the one that's over 100. Okay, so making sure you put stuff in the right spot is the whole key to this, and that's all this first section is making sure you're comfortable working with percentages. Again, we'll deal with percents and word problems in 3B, and that's later on. So practice these problems, and we'll see you later. Thanks.